Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about two articles that bring up two different cases of planning committees, one in Jerusalem and the other in Tel Aviv, demanding a lot of money in betterment tax on properties that are going through or have the right to go through Tama 38. One article is in Globes, the other is in Ynet, and they both highlight the confusion surrounding Tama 38 and betterment tax, or Hetel Hashbacha. Real quick, for those who don't know, Tama 38 is a national zoning program designed to address the issue of buildings not built to withstand an earthquake. The government first issued the program in 2005. The short of it is that buildings that meet the criteria for Tama 38, for example, they predate 1980, or have been deemed by a structural engineer to not withstand an earthquake, and they are more than 2 floors and they're larger than 400 square meters, and there's no demolition order against the building. If the building meets this criteria, it receives building rights of up to 2.5 floors, plus potentially the ground level if the building is built on columns. So these rights can be given over to a developer in exchange for the developer either strengthening the existing building against earthquakes or knocking the building down altogether and building a brand new building instead. That obviously meets the standards of today. The developer then sells the new apartments he's built from rights, and in exchange, the old apartment owners get a safer building, up to 25 meters more interior space per apartment, including a safe room, potentially more outdoor space as well, a nicer looking building, an elevator, and in some cases, parking and better amenities and so on. The biggest kicker is that unlike zoning ordinances, Tama 38 comes with an exemption from Hetel Hashbacha, or the betterment tax. So this is a tax that can be collected after the municipality's building committee issues a new zoning ordinance that improves real estate assets and increases their value. This tax is collected either when one sells or applies for a building permit. For example, we sold a penthouse with a very, very large rooftop terrace in the German colony. A new zoning ordinance was passed after our client purchased the property, and he now had the building rights to add over 80 square meters of interior space on his roof terrace. That would allow him to build another floor. So when he sold his apartment, he had to pay a lot of money in betterment tax. The calculation is the appraised value of 50% of those rights. So take his case. 80 meters in the German colony was about $10,000 per meter at the time. Those were the days. The appraiser appraised the rights to the 80 meters at half the price per meter built, so $5,000 per meter, which comes out to $400,000, and the betterment tax is 50% of that. So our seller paid roughly $200,000 in taxes. Not bad, Jerusalem. Through Tama 38, you're supposed to get an exemption on that tax. The thought process is that Tama itself is a benefit to the area, and that tax exemption is exactly the incentive necessary in order to get developers to strengthen these buildings. In the case in Jerusalem, the building committee was charging the developer betterment tax on apartments they were selling in a well-known in-between stage, which is basically after they received the approval for the Tama 38, but before they received the actual building permit. Without getting into the whole legal mumbo-jumbo and defining the exemption clause as it applies to Tama 38, the judge found in favor of the company that sold the apartments, and they did not have to pay the tax. In Tel Aviv, it was a different story. There, the building committee charged betterment tax on a private sale. The seller sold an apartment in a building that met all the criteria for Tama 38. But in Tel Aviv, there's a plan called Rova 3, which is similar to Jerusalem's 9988 in Rehavia. This zoning plan argues the building committee circumvented Tama 38 and gives pretty much the same rights as Tama, but requires paying the betterment tax. Residents of those areas are claiming that this is absolutely unfair and is in direct conflict with Tama 38. In both cases, there is the issue of how concrete and imminent these plans really are. In other words, even if these buildings meet the criteria for Tama 38 or are in the Rova 3 and 9988 locations, there's absolutely no certainty that there won't be neighbors objecting or other hurdles that delay or prevent construction. There's also a question of at what stage in the process is the building in when the sale even took place. Obtaining a permit and building in Israel is a very long, daunting process that lacks certainty. When talking about a whole building with many individually owned apartments, sellers are fighting back, or at least getting an appraiser or an attorney that specializes in betterment tax on their behalf to argue down the tax by citing the unlikelihood of the building, or at least deducting building rights given over the apartment through Tama 38 and not calculating the rights from status quo. In other words, if your apartment now has rights of 30 meters through 9988 or ROVA 3, you should be able to deduct the 25 meters your apartment receives through Tama 38 and only pay for that 5-meter difference. There's clearly a movement in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem to circumvent the betterment tax exemption in the case of Tama 38, and the situation is quite complicated. It's always a good idea before selling to check with a local real estate attorney to make sure you fully understand all the taxes and costs upon the sale of your property. Thank you so much for tuning in, and till next time.